Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here today, in front of all of you to listen to my presentation. My name is Wang, and I'm the Head of Strategic Growth representing Parity Technologies. Today, my talk will be about Polkadot and why Polkadot is the perfect platform for gaming, NFTs, and Metaverse applications to build on top of. So I'd like to separate this talk into three categories. So I'll begin by talking about what Polkadot is about and a little bit of introduction about our technology because a lot of people seem to have many misconceptions about our technology. And then I'll talk a little bit about how Polkadot relates to builders in general. And finally, talk about how Polkadot relates to, more specifically, NFT, Metaverse, and gaming builders. So at a very high level and in relatively technical terms, Polkadot is a heterogeneous multi-chain network that connects and secures blockchains with pooled security and interoperability. Now, these are some pretty complicated terms, so hopefully, through the later slides, you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what this means. So, what Polkadot really does is it unites and secures and facilitates a network of heterogeneous blockchains. And by heterogeneous blockchains, I mean blockchains that are different from one another, as opposed to parallel blockchains that you see on, for example, ETH sharding, where all the blockchains are relatively similar. And these heterogeneous blockchains in Polkadot are called parachains. And through the architecture in which all of these parachains are connected not only to one another, but also to, well, basically like the mothership of the Polkadot chains called the relay chain, it gives you some pretty interesting technical properties. So one property that it gives you is interoperability natively. So by connecting all of these blockchains together, these chains can basically talk to each other using a native messaging protocol without going through any bridges. So chain 1 can talk to chain A using what we call XCMP, and without major concerns about security related to bridges. Another property that we see is scalability. So because each blockchain is different from one another, and then you have hundreds of blockchains in the Polkadot ecosystem, each of these blockchains can have, let's say, from hundreds to thousands of TPS by themselves. And if you linearly scale each of these blockchains together, like let's say one blockchain has 500 TPS and you times 100, then the Polkadot network can handle a throughput of quite a few transactions. And finally, something that's commonly misunderstood is one of the major value propositions that Polkadot has over anyone else so far in production is what we call shared security. So when people build their own blockchains, they have to often worry about bootstrapping a network of validators and security nodes. And through the Polkadot network, because all of these parachains are connected to the relay chain, the security of the validators is delegated to the entire system. So the entire might of the $8 billion of, or whatever Polkadot network is worth right now, of security is used to secure each and every single blockchain in Polkadot. And so I talked about the first three kind of points about Polkadot. So more on the network scale. So Polkadot connects networks together through interoperability. Through scalability, it allows you to handle heavy traffic at scale. And also through shared security, provides each blockchain with industry-leading security. But also, what about the individual blockchain level? Why would you be motivated, or what's so unique about each of the blockchains that are being built in Polkadot? So each Polkadot parachain enables a custom-made platform built for a specific application. And it also allows you to revolutionize the type of governance you can do through our native governance modules that are already being widely used today in our ecosystem. And most importantly, each blockchain can self-update while it's running, allowing the blockchain to be future-proof. So, for example, with our technology, using WebAssembly, you can basically, while the blockchain is still running, perform a major update like swapping the consensus mechanism from proof of authority or proof of work to proof of stake without at all worrying about forking or having the validator set be changed in a difficult manner. So if, for example, Ethereum v1, Ethereum 1.0 was to be built on our technology, it could probably be hot swapped into Ethereum 2.0, like proof of stake, relatively easier than how they actually handled it themselves. So to talk a little bit about a custom-built blockchain for specific use cases. So these blockchains could be basically built to do anything you want, right? So a custom blockchain could, for example, be used for IoT. And in our presentation today, like we've seen a decent number of NFT blockchains. We've seen a decent number of gaming-specific blockchains and blockchains that handle Metaverse very customizably. And as you can see, like single blockchains are generally can be built to do one thing really well. So as an example, Bitcoin is built to be a very secure peer-to-peer network for transactions. But however, Bitcoin is not really good for basically any other applications that are being built on top of that. And I think that's the design that Satoshi basically had envisioned, right? I don't think they envisioned kind of a Bitcoin to be a general purpose platform. And same with any custom blockchain built on top of Polkadot. A blockchain being built on top of Polkadot, let's say NFT blockchain, will do NFT stuff much better than any generalized blockchain should be able to do, because all of the parameters of the blockchain itself are custom tailored for that specific use case and not generalizable for basically everyone to build on top of. And of course, single blockchains in Polkadot as well can be built to attempt to do a lot of things. So for example, on Ethereum, Ethereum is a generalized smart contract platform where you can pretty much build any type of application that you want. We have similar applications on Polkadot as well. For example, platforms like Moonbeam or Akala that also supports not only EVM smart contracts, but also like Rust-based smart contracts as well. In case you just want to develop a solution that's not as custom, but also wants to interact with the Polkadot ecosystem. And in order to enable these custom blockchains, like to do all this really cool stuff, we built this SDK framework called Substrate. So Substrate is essentially a modular, which means it's kind of made by various modules or pieces, flexible and extensible framework for building various blockchains. And so by reusing the battle-tested libraries or modules, you can basically mix and match the best modules that you want to build the exact type of chain and system that you want. So for example, if you wanted to build a POA network with, let's say, oracles enabled, and let's say NFTs on it. We have a module for NFTs, we have a module for POA consensus, and then we have a module for oracles. And when you want to, in the future, let's say people are complaining to you, they're like, oh, well, POA is way too centralized, Eric. Like, what are you going to do about it? And then while the blockchain is running, you're running that blockchain, you can just upgrade it live into POS through your governance while the blockchain is running. So I think that's pretty awesome. And one thing that I'd like to additionally say is people often ask, well, Eric, if you build this thing, like build a parachain or build a blockchain on Polkadot, like I want my application to also interact with Ethereum or with like Solana or whatever, right? Like with all this other cool stuff that's going on in the other ecosystems. There's also a number of bridges being built on Polkadot that enables people to transfer assets like NFTs, like gaming assets, like Metaverse NFTs between the Polkadot ecosystem and Ethereum as well. And so previous section talked a little bit about what Polkadot is, but I don't think that's the interesting part because I think people can generally look at more about Polkadot online if they wanted to. But more specifically, how Polkadot relates to your particular project. So really in any ecosystem out there, there's really three types of builders that we see, like that are building on blockchains, right? People are building either the chains themselves, they're building dApps that are being built on top of chains. These could be smart contract dApps being built on top of Ethereum, for example, or they're building infrastructure like tooling services and integrations to support the chains and dApps that are being run on top of these things. And in Polkadot in particular, the types of chains you can build are one, a parachain. So a parachain is the chain that's connected to the Polkadot network. And 2 is a solo substrate chain. So that is a chain that is built using the substrate SDK, but for generally various reasons, the company decides to make it run by itself and not connect to Polkadot, right? So it's completely independent layer 1, and we've seen a lot of companies try to do that as well using our SDK. This is somewhat comparable to a lot of blockchains being built on the Cosmos SDK. So for example, Terra is being built on the Cosmos SDK as a solo chain for the most part. And on the dApp side, this is also a very common misconception people have of Polkadot. I think people generally see this ecosystem or this network as this interoperability framework, right? So basically, all people think all Polkadot does is connect these blockchains together. But what people so often don't realize is that most of the builders within the ecosystems and most of the builders that we actually want to encourage in Polkadot are actually dApp builders, because there's only a finite number of builders that are suitable, have the right resources, or want to build chains. And most of the applications can be built as dApps, either as consumer applications or as higher level protocols. So a consumer application could be like, let's say, like an individual game, whether it's a casual game, a AAA game, or whatnot. It could also be a higher level protocol, like for example, like an NFT marketplace, like decentralized identity solutions for gaming. And you might ask, well, why does it make sense in general to build an application-specific blockchain when I already have, like, let's say, a generalized platform to build on? And there's a few reasons for that. So I think all of these reasons kind of tie in a little bit to kind of the flexibility of being able to kind of tailor things to yourself, to your own needs. So one is performance. Because of the flexible nature of the substrate SDK, and generally like stuff like Cosmos SDK as well, you can basically design various user sets. You can design the right consensus mechanism, the right block production mechanism, the right type of smart contracts you want to enable to maximize the possible performance of your ecosystem to best fit your particular needs. You can also design the exact type of security that you want your ecosystem to have. So if you want just your network to have 5 nodes running, like in an enterprise, like node set, to kind of validate the network to maximize security as an enterprise solution, you could do that. Or if you want to kind of distribute it in various proof of stake validator sets, you can do that as well. And I think the most important thing that I want to emphasize is the sovereignty part. So from my numerous conversations that I've had with Korean enterprises and enterprises abroad, as well as just medium-stage companies, a lot of companies see the value of not being able to be dependent on other ecosystems to function for their particular use cases because their customers demand that maybe this blockchain should always be up and that they have certain service level agreements to be met. And on the sovereignty part, like a narrative that's been around for a while is the idea of a layer 1 value premium. So by building an application-specific layer 1, a lot of these companies wish to capture the layer 1 value premium that they won't be able to capture by building just an application. However, building normal custom blockchains present a ton of challenges. So one is basically everyone who's tried to build a blockchain from scratch has essentially failed to do it, unless they're like a major layer 1 platform like Polkadot or like Ethereum or something, because it takes many years and a ton of money and manpower to be able to build a blockchain from scratch. Also, like if you build a blockchain from scratch, your blockchain can't really talk to other blockchains without building a centralized bridge for the most part. And that's something that a lot of legacy blockchain infrastructure has, a big problem. And also in the security issue is that if you have all these blockchains out there, that are already built, like these legacy blockchains from like, let's say 2017 or 2018, these blockchains would basically naturally compete with one another over limited security resources, because there's only a limited number of validators and nodes out there that want to choose to validate or secure certain networks, that the more blockchains there are, traditionally speaking, each one of them becomes less secure. And Polkadot really solves each of these problems very well. So the substrate SDK takes out a lot of the overhead by using these reusable modules that people can mix and match to build on. The native interoperability of Polkadot allows these ecosystems not to be isolated when they're built. And so all these custom app chains, all these enterprises, gaming companies, or metaverse companies, NFT companies can then talk to each other and then exchange their ideas and then be more powerful together. And in terms of being more powerful together, on the security side, it's also important because shared security doesn't force blockchains to compete with each other for resources, but by aggregating these resources together, each of them becomes more powerful as an aggregate. And so what I want to emphasize is that, like, essentially, no matter whether you're trying to build in this section, a metaverse, NFT, or gaming product, Polkadot has an ideal solution for you and is an ideal network for you to build. So I've lived in Korea for almost 2 years. I'm Chinese American, but yeah, I live in Seoul. And something that I've discovered is that Korea is one of the best markets in the world to do NFTs, gaming, and metaverse applications. And there's a few reasons for that. One is the really strong entertainment IP that's already out there. Let's say like in K-pop and other types of entertainment, Korea is essentially second to none in terms of the amount of existing kind of intellectual property that's being developed and already there. And also, like on the gaming and metaverse side specifically, Korea has one of the richest gaming development histories and gaming user bases out there in the world. Like the whole Nexons and Netmarble's and WeMades in the world are already making massive strides towards building blockchain products with full commitment. And this is really interesting to us because for each of these types of builders, whether small or large, there's a way in Polkadot to build on. And like these people are building various types of applications, right? So people can build, like in the gaming stack, as an example, like an NFT marketplace just by itself, right? That serves other applications. People can build payments and DeFi for gaming. People can build indie games. So for example, like when Sandbox or Axie were first started, those were basically indie games made by like small game studios without maybe much prior official gaming experience. In Korea, what we see largely is more of the casual, like more of the AAA gaming side. So people can build individual casual AAA games or non-casual AAA games with varying degrees of complexity. And we see a lot of companies already try to do each of these things. And one really interesting thing that I've been seeing developed more recently is a lot of people are also foregoing the idea of an individual game and building a platform for games. So I think a lot of these larger gaming companies are realizing that, hey, instead of me building, or me using another NFT marketplace or another payment DeFi platform or another set of wallets, why don't I just build a gaming platform as an application, as my own layer one, add my own NFT marketplace, add my own payments platform, and then also add my own set of games, as well as be able to have my community built on top of me. And then my platform then aggregates all the value to my token and to my ecosystem and to my user base. And so I think this kind of multiple kind of chains idea are going to be increasingly seen by large gaming companies in Korea and abroad. And in terms of Polkadot, as I mentioned, there's a perfect way to build for each of these particular use cases that I mentioned. So for example, chains can be suited for, let's say, a AAA gaming platform, right? You want to build your own ecosystem, you want to capture all of that value, and you have a lot of manpower to do it. A chain would be a perfect idea. You want to build a really customized game that has a lot of, let's say, different features, and then you want to put your own NFT ecosystem on top of it. A chain could also potentially make sense depending on what it is. You have a huge user base. They take a lot of throughput. You're building a large metaverse platform. Let's say you're Meta. You want to serve the next 6 billion users or whatever, right? A chain would make sense. Your own chain would make sense. It wouldn't make sense to build on top of another chain and share all these resources with other people. The difference between building on a substrate-based chain and a parachain just depends on how much sovereignty you perceive you want to have. So for example, as a parachain, you're part of the Polkadot ecosystem. As a substrate-based chain, you're not exactly part of the Polkadot ecosystem, you're using the substrate-based technology. And on the application side, people can build on top of these chains, right? So you have all these cool chains being built, whether they're customized chains, gaming chains, or a general smart contract chain. You can build an NFT marketplace on that. You can build your own set of gaming identities. You can build your own NFT standards, right? So on Polkadot, there's a number of people building their own unique NFT standards in addition to the ERC 721 or the ERC 1155 stuff that's already out there. And finally, if you're like an end user application, you can build an indie gaming platform, an individual game, or let's say an application that does K-pop that has a lot of users, but the logic on chain is not particularly complex. That'll be very suitable for you to build like on a smart contract or on the chain code level on top of chains. And between the kind of value add of chains on Polkadot versus the value adds of applications on Polkadot, the chains on Polkadot generally has some advantages, such as the value premium of being a layer 1 that's perceived in the market right now, ecosystem value accrual to your own ecosystem through your own marketplaces, your own standards, your own like issuance, etc. You can upgrade on the fly while the blockchain is running to add more kind of core applications to your ecosystem, and you don't really need a bootstrap validator nodes. And also, if you're a Polkadot parachain, you can quickly talk to other chains, not only on Polkadot, but also chains like Ethereum and such, very easily. And as an application, you can develop on EVM, on EVM smart contracts on top of various parachains that support that, or you can develop on Rust, either as a smart contract or as chain code, which is a little bit more efficient, but a little bit more, requires some collaboration between yourself and the foundation that supports that particular parachain. You can, for a gaming or NFT or Metaverse application, use the ERC 721.1155 remark, which is a native Polkadot NFT standard, or any NFT standard you wish, and then you could build it on the chain that's best suited for your particular application, as opposed to relying on something that's just general purpose for everyone. And so, actually, so this version of the deck doesn't have my last slide, but my previous slide that was going to be here was going to mention a little bit about some various builders already on the Polkadot ecosystem, but I'll get to that in the next slide. So this is essentially what your parachain will look like on Polkadot if you build a parachain. So you have your own gaming metaverse chain, and then on top of your chain, you implement, let's say, the remark NFT standard, okay, or any NFT standard you want. You have your own NFT collection, your own NFT marketplace, and your own on-chain DeFi. And then as a gaming studio, you have your own selection of awesome medium, small, or AAA games that you want people to play. And then with your NFT collection, you can also trade that with, let's say, Unique Network, which is generating their own set of unique NFT collections as well. You can also trade those NFTs with Engine, which is building a parachain in Polkadot that also has the IP of, let's say, Final Fantasy, like on the Engine blockchain, right? So you can then put like Final Fantasy NFTs on your blockchain if you so desire. And all of that is kind of secured by the Polkadot relay chain, and all of the value that happens on your own chain will accrue to your own blockchain as opposed to someone else's NFT marketplace, let's say. And yeah, my other slides, I guess, were not here. But yeah, I guess that concludes my presentation. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much. I believe that we have a lot of questions for you as well, so we'll put them up on the slide. The first one is in English. So if one chain is attacked on a parachain, would other chains be affected as well? And how safe are the parachains?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it depends on what kind of attack that is. So if, for example, you're like a DeFi parachain, and then your DeFi like code, like smart contract codes gets hacked or something, then other chains won't really be affected, right? Because that's like isolated to your own system. However, like if the entire network of Polkadot somehow gets hacked, like let's say the relay chain gets hacked, then the entire network gets affected. But then in order to attack the entire relay chain ecosystem, you would have to have an insurmountable amount of monetary resources enabled to do that. So generally speaking, attacking one parachain won't really affect the security of another parachain.
Okay, simple enough. Thank you very much. The next question is, in order to expand the Polkadot ecosystem, are there any plans or efforts that you're putting into or especially doing? And what is the one main reason that you're proposing Polkadot?
Yeah, so we have quite a few resources that we're using to expand our ecosystem. So for example, we have probably the very first type of builders program out there in the world that I think a lot of other ecosystems have looked at and emulated as well to kind of support existing builders or new builders to actually launch their ecosystems. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was, what's the biggest reason that you're proposing Polkadot?
Yeah,
recommending Polkadot.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason I would recommend Polkadot is really just like the flexibility out there and ability to interact with everything else. The interoperability and the ability to build whatever you want and not have to depend on a solution that's one size fits all, but a solution that's fit for you and that maximizes the potential of what you're trying to build.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we do have another question. How fast is the Polkadot blockchain? Is TPS or time to finality one of the competitive advantages?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say TPS is definitely one of the advantages. So because Polkadot is horizontally scalable, each individual blockchain can generally scale from, let's say, a few hundred to a few thousand TPS that we've seen so far. So Polkadot right now supports about 150 parachains. So let's say on average it's 500 transactions per second on each chain, and you multiply that by 150, it's about 75,000 transactions per second in the whole network, which is even without any layer 2 scaling technology that's being added on top of this. In terms of time to finality, there's two things that you gotta look at. So one is kind of the transaction happening in your own parachain itself. And that depends on kind of the security parameters that you set. So for example, if you want each transaction on your parachain to be 0.5 seconds, you can technically do that. But for the transactions to be final in the entire Polkadot network through the relay chain, that takes about 6 seconds to finish. So it depends on, like, let's say how secure you want that transaction to be. If your transaction is for a small value, let's say it's like a $2 transaction, probably like 0.1 seconds or 0.5 seconds could be fast enough if your blockchain parachain itself allows that. But if it's like a higher value transaction, it might have to wait for the entire relay chain to verify that transaction is final first.
Okay. Next question. All right. What kind of dApps does Polkadot aim to build more within its ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always kind of experimenting and looking at new types of applications in the ecosystem. So when we kind of first did business development in Polkadot, we first looked at, okay, the first fundamental building block is actually the blockchains, right? Because without these parachains, people can't even build any dApps. And now that these parachains are launched, we are supporting these parachains to build various types of dApps. The most popular dApps that are being built is about 30% DeFi, 30 to 35% DeFi, and then another 30 to 35% is gaming or metaverse related. So those are two most popular categories, which I'm sure is probably comparable to other ecosystems out there. But we don't particularly encourage a particular type of dApp. But what we've been really looking at these days is like also why I'm talking about NFTs and gaming and metaverse is to encourage more NFT, gaming, and metaverse developers to build dApps in our ecosystem.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have, yes, we have another one. What do you want the audience to remember the most from today's talk?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the audience should remember the most is just that how Polkadot just supports every type of builder, and that no matter what you're trying to build, Polkadot is basically a perfect solution for you to launch your next project in.
I think that rounds out the best part of his presentation. So thank you very much for your great speech and your great Q&A. Please give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.